A century after the Normans had first arrived in southern Italy, most of their conquests had accumulated into two larger states, the Duchy of Apulia on the mainland and the County of Sicily. It would be the Sicilian Roger II who finally unified and forged them into one of the most powerful, prosperous and tolerant kingdoms in all of medieval Europe. He had been born the son of Count Roger I of Sicily in 1095 and succeeded his brother Simon at the age of 9. Most of his childhood is believed to have been spent either in Mileto in Calabria or in the family castle in northeastern Sicily. There he was educated by Greek and Arab tutors, and is said to have had a natural talent for language learning, arts, and to some extent sciences. In recognition of his knowledge of the Byzantine court, he was given the title of Proto-Nobilissimos by the Byzantine emperor in 1109. The following summer, Roger was visited by the Norwegian king Sigurd the Crusader, who on his way to Jerusalem is said to have named him King of Sicily, although in reality he only received the title 20 years later. At any rate, Roger took the reins of power in 1112, thus ending the regency led by his mother, which had ruled the county ever since his father died. The next great milestone in his life took place in 1127. Duke William II of Apulia, who Roger had previously aided against rebels, died childless in July that year. This allowed Roger to claim all of his possessions on the Italian peninsula, a decision which would be received with considerable opposition. The local barons had always resented the rule of the Hautevils, whom they considered as upstarts. Pope Honorius II, on the other hand, feared the growing Norman power, which after all was just on his doorstep, and tried to launch a crusade against Roger II. But as this failed, he was eventually forced to recognize Roger as Duke of Apulia, Calabria, and Sicily. So, now at the age of 32, the young Duke had united Norman Italy and found himself one of the most influential princes in Europe. But there was still something missing. Roger wanted to weld his dominions into one coherent entity, and he also wanted to be able to treat with his fellow rulers on equal terms. In order to accomplish this, he would need a royal crown. Since royal crowns are usually granted by the papacy, that's where he turned his attention. Luckily, the hostile Pope Honorius II soon died, followed by a dispute over papal succession. One of the candidates, Innocent II, had the support of the energetic Bernard of Clairvaux, who had soon convinced most of Europe in his favour. The rival Pope Analectus II then turned to Roger and was granted his full support in exchange for the royal title. And so on Christmas Day 1130, Roger II was crowned King of Sicily in Palermo. As you might imagine though, the supporters of Innocent weren't too happy about this, and soon enough Bernard of Clairvaux had organised a coalition comprising Louis VI of France, Henry I of England, and the Holy Roman Emperor Lothar III against Analectus and his quote, half-heathen king. It would take a long time for the invasion to get going, but Roger would have plenty to do anyway, as southern Italy soon revolted against him. Finally, in 1136, a long-awaited attack led by Lothar III and supported by the Byzantine Emperor marched into the kingdom, straight down to the southernmost tip of the mainland. There they stopped. Lothar had of course wished to conquer all of Sicily, but exhausted from campaigning in the hot Mediterranean summer, the German troops revolted, and so the emperor settled for just capturing the mainland and returned to Germany. As soon as he had left, Roger disembarked in Calabria and began reclaiming his kingdom. In January 1138, Pope Analectus II died, but Innocent still refused to reconcile with Roger, and in the following year, the Pope launched one last invasion of Sicily. The large force that they managed to gather wouldn't get very far though. It was ambushed near the border, the Pope was taken prisoner, and 3 days later, Innocent was forced to proclaim Roger as King of Sicily. Soon afterwards, the remaining rebellions were put down, and Roger could start focusing on centralizing his realm. Building upon his father's legacy, the powers of the often troublesome nobles were decreased, and instead a bureaucracy based on Greek and Arabic models was created. The kingdom's finances were generally entrusted to the Arabs, and the fact that the capital of Palermo soon became one of the wealthiest cities in Europe certainly speaks well of their competence. The role of the king was also strengthened, reflecting Roger's Byzantine concept of monarchy. All this reforming led to contemporaries claiming that the king accomplished more in his sleep than others did in their waking day. In order to protect all of the trade generating Sicily's wealth, Roger also had the most powerful fleet in the Mediterranean built. Its leader had the title of Emir of Emirs, which is where the word admiral comes from, and was the second most powerful man in the kingdom. Under the greatest of his admirals, the Greek George of Antioch, this fleet managed to conquer much of what is today Tunisia, as well as parts of Libya. It also harassed the Byzantine coast, capturing the island of Corfu and abducting the best of the Theban silk workers to found a new workshop in Palermo. But despite having a powerful fleet and army, Roger never went on a crusade. This was to a large extent because of the tolerant nature of his kingdom. One can imagine that his Muslim soldiers wouldn't have been too enthusiastic about it. But he also happened to hate the Frankish rulers of Jerusalem ever since his mother's disastrous remarriage with King Baldwin I 34 years earlier. For the most part, Roger stayed in his capital of Palermo and surrounded himself with leading intellectuals of the time. The Kingdom of Sicily became unique in the sense that it was the only place where you could study both Greek and Arabic, and where Western and Oriental scholars could meet on an equal footing. Being a curious intellectual himself, Roger sponsored many projects, the most noteworthy of which would be the Tabula Rogeriana, created by Muhammad al-Idrisi. Also known as the Book of Pleasant Journeys into Faraway Lands, this would remain one of the most accurate world maps for the next 3 centuries, and contain descriptions of the physical, cultural and political conditions of regions all over the known world. He was also a patron of architecture, funding among other things the construction of the Palatine chapel. This building is conceived on a Latin plan, filled with Byzantine mosaics and topped by an Islamic stalactite roof, and thus serves as a symbol of his multi-ethnic kingdom. Roger II died on the 26th of February 1154 and was succeeded by his son William.